تبسم تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر.
The sanctity of human life is a supreme value in Islam, and nothing can justify the taking of a human life. Such heinous acts of murder and violence are dishonorable and betray any expression of faith in Islam. Our condemnation of the Islamic State or ISIS has been echoed by the Muslim Judicial Council, the MJC, as well as the Jamiatul Ulama of South Africa. Our guest speaker today will focus more on this topic. We are delighted to welcome him, Omar Shouket, who is a researcher in Johannesburg at the Afro Middle East Center. Omar Shouket is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Virginia in the United States. And along with focusing on the Syrian crisis and Islamist politics, he also maintains an interest in political theory and the sociology of social movements in the Muslim world. And we make dua and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us so that we may be able to get sanity back in the Middle East. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to touch the hearts of all of the families of the innocent victims, inshallah. So without further ado then, I would like to call upon our guest speaker.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. First of all, I would like to thank all of you, and especially Sheikh Rashid Omar, for giving me the chance to come here and talk to you a little about the Islamic State, or Daesh as they are often known as. I basically just want to focus on, the news stories around this group have created a lot of discussion, all kinds of discussions about who's behind it, who are the people in the group, who's benefiting from it, who might be its funders, and where is the future of this, are the Muslims condemning this or not. I want to try to push aside most of those discussions today and focus on some of the abuses that they've carried out, human rights abuses that they've carried out, and talk a little about that. And so let's begin by remembering what brought the Islamic State into the news. Immediately was their capture of Mosul in June, which got a lot of attention. And then what, more so than that, made it a bigger international topic was how they were targeting religious minorities within Iraq, and how that led to the American government deciding that it has to intervene by dropping bombs from their fighter jets and coming to the protection of this group of religious minority group in Iraq, the Yazidis they're known as. So that's the immediate context in which this discussion is unfolding. Now, one thing I would like us to keep in mind is that these people, the Islamic State and their followers, are coming from a specific background in which they have interpreted a particular idea, al-wala wal-bara, in Arabic, the idea of being friends with, being allies with, and disassociating yourself. They've radicalized it to such an extent that I think it's sort of been reduced to an absurdity now. And the group that they want to, when they're talking about tabarra, or they're talking about trying to disassociate themselves, they're talking about not just saying that somebody doesn't speak in my name or somebody doesn't act in my name. They are actually, they've taken it to the level where they say this association has to involve killing. And it's in this context that Christians and Yazidis and any other Muslim that they have run into, who they disagree with, they tend to do takfir on them. Takfir obviously meaning declaring them non-Muslims. And then they decide that under the doctrine of disassociation, they must also kill some of these people. Now, so within Iraq, there's a lot of stuff that has happened, but even before that, in Syria, there have been Christian priests who, some of them, in fact, one particular one, he actually had been living in the province of Raqqa for a long time, and he was given the option to move out of Raqqa, but he decided not to when the Syrian crisis developed into basically a civil war. He decided he didn't want to move out of that place because he had been serving that community for a very long time, and running charity schools, doing all kinds of social services, rendering all kinds of social services. And he said, this is the time when people need me, and I'm not going to leave. And as far as he wasn't really even involved in any kind of proselytization. Not that that would be a problem, but still, he wasn't involved in any kind of proselytization. But he was, killed, beheaded. His head was sort of marched around town. And so these kinds of smaller things had been, comparatively smaller things, had been happening in Syria for a while, before the focus shifted to the actions of the group within Iraq. So, for example, with the Yazidis, what they've done is they came into this town, the Sinjar town, and they captured, in mass people, separated women from children, and put the men on trucks and took them away, and just threw them out and started shooting them. And this has happened multiple times. If people are interested for more detailed, sorry, just 1 second. I realize that clock is not working. So if people are interested, you might want to look at Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch reports. And so the specific story I was telling you about is what they've done with the Yazidis near the Sinjar mountain. They put people on trucks, they took them away, and they shot them without asking any questions. Sometimes some of the survivors that, their accounts tell us that they were given this question, would all of you convert to Islam? And, but when people even hesitate, they start shooting. So maybe in their minds, in some sense, they think that they've given people the option to convert to Islam, but you can imagine when you're in that context, right, you've been separated from your wife and your child, you have been lumped together with a bunch of men, you've been put on a truck, and it's nighttime, and somebody's saying to you, will you convert to Islam? What sort of mental state would you be in? This also points to how they understand dawah, because in their own documents, they say things like, you can make dawah to a whole group and just talk to one leader, and that one leader speaks for everybody, and if that leader decides that that's not the case, then you can kill the whole group. There are these strange ideas of how they understand people's responsibility to convert or not convert, and how then they, on the basis of that, decide that everybody can now be killed, is really strange, even at the doctrinal level, and also, like I was telling you, what happens with this. Imagine the psychology of the person on the truck. Is that person sane enough at that moment, or feeling secure enough, safe enough to make any kind of decision about accepting Islam or not? But anyway, they decided to kill them. And then what has happened, as far as we know, with the women and children that were abducted, some of them have been able to, communicate with families outside. And the biggest worry right now that the human rights community has is that these girls and children, we would call them children, they might have been sold into some kind of sexual slavery, and some of them might also have been raped. We don't have enough confirmed reports, but that is the big worry, and there is some evidence that this has occurred. The extent of this has not been revealed. We don't know as yet what exactly is happening, and this is a developing story, so new information will keep coming out. Now, maybe also we need to remember that this group isn't just focusing on non-Muslims. Right? Not that we need to be told that they are focusing on Muslims to bring home the horror of what they are committing, But I think it's important to keep in mind that they're not doing something that cannot be targeted towards people like us. It can be. So some of the Muslims that they've killed, even people who were trying to mediate between them and Al-Qaeda, because this group has disagreed with Al-Qaeda on many different things, even those mediating figures, they decided that, because they have switched out of the ideas that Islamic State holds, and these mediators are now speaking on behalf of Al-Qaeda, hence they can be killed. And they have killed them, beheaded them, paraded their heads around. In addition to that, I think the last figure that I saw, that there are about 5 mass graves that we think when this group took over territory in Tikrit in Iraq, that over there 5 mass graves have been discovered. And the number of dead that we know that were sort of killed in summary very quickly as soon as these Iraqi soldiers were captured is about 600-700. But interestingly, in their own video releases, they talk about having killed 1,700 people so far. So for them, this is definitely something that they're not exaggerating when you say these things. It looks like this has happened, and it will probably continue happening, because the way they decide that these people should be killed, these soldiers that they captured from the Iraqi army, are essentially just on the basis of that they have been part of the Iraqi army. This is the reasoning of the group. The captured soldiers are part of the Iraqi army, and the Iraqi army is a client of the Iranian state. The Iranian state is a Shia group. Hence, what we're dealing with in front of us are Rafidin, according to them, which basically means the rejectors of Islam, because they don't have any sense of Shia being Muslim. So that's another example where people have been very quickly on the basis of their affiliation. And we all know that people join military groups for all kinds of reasons. Not everybody who's a part of the military in Iraq is necessarily there because they carry some sort of anti-Sunni bias. So the larger point over here is there is no sense of accountability. There is no sense of properly taking into account the factors, the personal biographies of people who they're killing. These are just numbers. And I would actually not recommend anybody to look at these videos, but if you happen to come across how gleefully people are cheering deaths and killing, it's really painful. It's really painful to see this happening, because these people are doing this in the name of Islam. And I think it's required that other Muslims, and alhamdulillah, many Muslims across the world have come out and denounced what has happened. And this shall continue to happen. And inshallah, some of the recruits that they are finding, the number of those recruits will keep going down. But that shouldn't distract us from a larger issue. The Islamic State and its violence and our condemnation of that group shouldn't distract us from a larger issue, which, to put it very simply, is that violence begets violence. There is a problem within the Middle East in which there are governments who have been around for a long time, and they practice violence very, very freely. And in that context, forgetting the doctrinal and the theological and the Shari or non-Shari resources that Islamic State draws upon, there is a kind of necessity, right? In order to survive, you have to learn how to deal with violence, and then often people get radicalized within that context. So when we are condemning the Islamic State, I think it's important to remember that it's not just the Islamic State that should be condemned, it's those factors that come together that create the conditions of violence. And in that, the Syrian state, the Syrian police, the Syrian army, the Iraqi police, the Iraqi army, world imperialist forces, the US, Russia, there's lots and lots. That's why I began by saying that this is a very complex situation. But just because we're focusing on one particular issue, because it has become the dominant issue in news, I hope we don't forget the fact that this is not just a problem of the Islamic State. The Iraqi police has also been quite brutal with peaceful protesters. So So we should remember that this is a much bigger problem. And I just want to leave us with one little image, which is, so there's this town immediately where there was a Shia population, Shia Turkmen, who were under siege for about 3 months. And there were about 15 to 18,000 people inside this town, and they were besieged by thousands of Islamic State fighters. Now imagine the condition of being besieged in this town, which is cut off from any other access, and the only way they're sustaining themselves is Iraqi military, like helicopters coming in and dropping aid, food and aid. Now this situation continued for 3 months. Now I hope we're all realizing that when we talk about siege and control of borders, control of access, right? There's one place that immediately comes to mind for all of us, I think. It's Gaza. What has happened in Gaza, we all know. We don't need to be reminded of that. But there are other groups who are following the same tactics that the Zionist state follows when it deals with Gaza. And they are doing this with other Muslims. And for 3 months this has continued. There was worry that people would die of starvation. There was worry that people would die of diseases. Now, in their mind, somehow they think it's justified. Maybe not everybody within the group thinks this is okay, but at least the leadership and the ideologues within the group, we know, are quite okay with these tactics. But let's put that aside. Let's just think about once this town recently has been liberated, the Iraqi army, together with strikes from the American planes, was able to push back the Islamic State fighters, and this town, the population of this town is now liberated. But once they went in, they realized that there were children babies that had just been born, and because of non-supply or no access to medical facilities and food and proper water, these children had died. Now, I mean, it's so terrible. Just think about it. Who are these children? They're born into Shia families. Are they Shia? Are they Sunni? I don't know. They somehow, because they've been born into Shia families, maybe Islamic State fighters think that these children are also Shia, and then for some reason it's okay for them to die. But it's a very strange and twisted concept of focusing or engaging in tactics that will lead to the death of innocents. How they justify it, I don't know. Maybe they think of it as a collateral damage and they say it's okay. But the last thing, as Sheikh Rashid Umar was mentioning, to take one life, to take one human life, بغير حق, is as if you've committed a genocide. I think in God's eyes, and I think other people might also agree, to take one life, to commit murder, is to commit genocide. So, whatever reasoning these people are holding on to, whether we agree with it or not, whether we see that this group is engaging in some kind of good or not, I think the larger point is to remember their tactics are leading to the deaths of innocents. And these innocent, I don't know how to even understand these people, these children. They are just children, that's what they are. They're not Shia, they're not Sunni, they haven't even had the chance to say the kalima, right? And if we all think, I think to a certain extent, that children are born as Muslim, I mean, what is going on over here? I don't know what this group is doing. We can all make dua that may they find hidayah and they come to maghfirah. But, at the same time, we should also openly say that they should be held accountable. And, we as Muslims should be condemning this, I think. But again, like I said, keep in mind, like when you're condemning this, there's a larger problem within the society, within that region, that we should be condemning. And I'll end with that. And I know some people before the discussion that I started, had come up to me and they really had lots of questions about details. So if people are interested, I'll be around afterwards and we can keep talking. But inshallah, thank you for your attention and your time.
تبسم تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر.